Welcome to another day in Mae Sot, Thailand. It is Monday, March 30th here in this COVID-19 era, and I just thought I would give an update on what I'm up to and what's going on here. There aren't a lot of activities to talk about, of course. As you can see, I'm here inside my hotel room in Mae Sot, and I think I've been inside this room straight 2, maybe 3 full days. I'm not sure. I managed to get in a bunch of food and water and stuff like that for a few days, and I really haven't been outside very much. So there isn't a lot to talk about there, but today I do plan on going outside and going for a walk around Mae Sot. And perhaps I'll pop in at some kind of a coffee shop, and I can sit down there and chat a little bit into the GoPro. We'll see if that works out. But before I go out, I thought I would tell you a little bit about the official situation here in Thailand, because I know it's different for every country in the world. And I found a website from the official Thailand tourism organization, from the government, and they've translated the official emergency measures from Thai into English so that all foreigners or tourists who are stranded in Thailand can read in English what all the rules are and what the restrictions are. And I just thought I'd tell you what those are, before I head outside into the city. So here's the page from the website. You can find these lists of these restrictions all over the place, but this is the most official one that I found. Up at the top, Thailand's first raft of measures issued under the state of emergency, right up there. These came into effect on March 26th, and I believe they are scheduled to go until April 30th for now. And of course, they could update these or change them at any time. Some very simple points. Number 1, restrictions for access to risk areas. Number 2, closure of risk areas. 3, basically closure of entry and access points, so all the borders are shut down. 4, restrictions on hoarding of consumer items and ensuring of price controls. 5, there's an important one, restrictions on large gatherings. 6, restrictions on the deliberate dispensing of distorted information. And finally, number 7, avoid commuting between provinces, and those who travel to another province will be required to undergo health checks and provide their personal details for tracking or quarantine. So that's the basic set of rules and restrictions, not nearly as extensive as those in Malaysia, for example, or even, I found out recently, my home country of Canada. Further down, they go into a few more details about each point. So no entry to hotspots. Basically, if you know that a certain area has a lot of infected cases, don't go there. And this one is quite interesting. The spots that are deemed risky for contagion, they include boxing stadiums, sports arenas, tournament grounds, playgrounds, racetracks. And then number 2, pubs, service establishments, entertainment venues, massage parlors, spas, fitness clubs, and other entertainment facilities operating in Bangkok and then the 5 provinces immediately around Bangkok. 3, other places including nature attractions, museums, public libraries, places of worship, transport terminals, markets, and department stores. And at the very bottom it says, may be ordered closed partially or entirely as seen necessary. So you've basically got the closures apply to like big sports events. And then number 2 is basically entertainment places. So like a restaurant can still be open, or a food stall or something like that. But if it is a pub, with entertainment, those are not allowed to be open. So that's the basic idea. So according to the emergency measures in Thailand, citizens and, foreign visitors like myself, we're all allowed to go outside. We just have to exercise common sense about where we go. And I think you'll find new rules depending on the province. I read this morning that the island of Phuket has shut down its borders, so you can no longer leave the island by boat or any other means. You can still fly in and out, but all the regular ways to leave that island are shut down. And I think Phuket has a curfew that runs from, I believe, 5 p.m. until 3 a.m. or something like that. Don't quote me on those times. But they do have a curfew, and I think that is in response to people gathering in large groups on the beach, because all the entertainment spots on Phuket are closed. So a lot of the people that are there kind of congregated on the beaches, maybe for sunsets or something like that. And they decided that that was not safe. People were not keeping social distance there, and they implemented the curfew. And there might be curfews in other provinces or cities that I don't know about or haven't heard about. I've done searches, but I haven't seen anything about this province or Mae Sot. There are no curfews or broad restrictions like that here. And you do see when you go online, you even see from government officials announcements saying that if you go outside, wear a mask, keep social distance, this kind of thing. So here I am leaving the hotel. It's a pretty hot day today. I think it's supposed to go up to 104, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. You can do the math on what that is in Celsius. Yesterday, of course, was Sunday, and the city did look quite a bit different on Sunday. Very, very quiet, not that many people out on the streets. But again, that's pretty normal for Sunday here. These two little restaurants that you see behind me, I talked about them before. They're open. And all the usual businesses that I see around me are all open as well. I don't have anywhere in particular to go, so I thought I'd just walk along one of the main drags here, and we'll see what's on my mind as I walk along. So there's the main street. Fair amount of traffic still running. Some businesses open over there. Automotive parts store, a little grocery shop. And this place over here is like a big distribution point for soft drinks and bottled water. You always see big trucks over there loading and unloading. Since I've been inside my hotel room for the last 2 days at least, I think it was actually 2 days, I spend a lot of time on my laptop and on YouTube, and I really enjoy tracking down videos from other foreigners that are, stranded around the world. Could almost form a little society now, get a t-shirt, I was stranded in Mae Sot, Thailand, or whatever. I was stranded in Manila, wherever people got stuck when all this happened and the borders closed. A lot of the stories are just fascinating, and they're all so different depending on the country that people got caught in. But the one that really stuck with me was from an Italian man here in Thailand. I think his name is Michele Ponte. I'll put a link to his video in the description below. And his story really struck a chord with me because he made a long, detailed video about his experience getting a 30-day visa extension in Bangkok. And I did the same thing here, a few days ago when my visa expired. And I saw photographs and articles online about how busy the immigration offices are in, the big cities in Bangkok and even on the big tourist islands. But his video gave a fascinating insight into what it was actually like to go there, as a foreigner to get the visa extension. Watching his video made me appreciate even more the relative ease with which I was able to get the extension up here in Mae Sot. Would have been a very different story down in Bangkok. He even had to take 2 runs at it. On his first day, he went to the main immigration office. He got there, and along the way, he was talking to himself or talking to his camera, saying that, well, it should be fine because a lot of foreigners have been leaving the country, because of the shutdown of the borders and everything. He thought so many people would have gone home that the immigration office would be relatively quiet. And so when he got there, he was in shock to see just how many people were there. They have a system, of course, where you take a number to be served, and there were so many people there that they ran out of numbers. I think their machine only went up to 3,000, and then it ran out. It just could not issue any more numbers, and the whole system came to a halt. And so, yeah, they were saying there are like 5,000 people there in total. So everyone who didn't get a ticket was basically told, you just have to go home and come back again the next day. And that was a bit disappointing for him because he had quite an adventure just getting there, just getting in a taxi and giving instructions to the taxi driver using Google Maps and trying to communicate through the language barrier how to get there, all that kind of thing. And then when you get into the immigration office, you have to figure out their system. Like where do we start? Do we go here? Do we go there? Like, what is the process? And you had to figure all that out. So the whole thing was very stressful right from the beginning, and made even more so because all he could do was turn around and go home again, and he knew he'd have to come back another day. This place, by the way, is another popular hotel, I think, in normal times when there are foreigners going back and forth from Myanmar. I've heard of a DK Hotel, quite a large place. I think the entrance is down there. And it's a, relatively a low budget hotel, similar to the one I'm staying at, I think, in terms of price. I went in there, long ago just to take a look at a room and see whether it was better or worse than where I was staying. If it was better, I would make a move. And I didn't see anything there that would convince me to move out of where I am. Still, it would be a fine place to stay. Anyway, to continue with Michele's story, he went back the next day to immigration. And now, of course, he knew a bit better how to get there, so he didn't have that much stress. And he went as early as possible. He went there an hour before it was supposed to open or something like that. So he thought he had more optimism for this day. But he shows up, and it turns out that between his first visit and this one, the next day, they had moved the immigration services to a new location. And that was because they were so overwhelmed with stranded tourists trying to get an extension that it was unsafe to have that many people crowded in such a small area. So they decided to move immigration to like a much bigger building. So he got there, and then suddenly he had these immigration helpers. I don't know whether they were clerks or volunteers or whoever they were. These, young women there with clipboards and organizing things, handing him a slip of paper with a map on it and an address saying, no, you can't get your extension here anymore. You have to go here. So the poor guy had to start all over again and find a new location. And my heart really went out to him because I could relate to all the things that were happening to him. He was talking to the girls and trying to get a little bit more detailed information. And it was really hard to get it from them. He wanted assurances that he really did have to go to this other place. He didn't want to make the trip all the way there, arrive there, and then find out that, no, you have to go over there, and have to come all the way back again. But he couldn't really get much information. And then he asked the girls, well, so it's easy to get there? How do I get there? Can I just show this map to a taxi driver and he will get me there? And they're like, yes, yes, oh, easy, easy, easy. Just show this to the taxi driver and you go. No problem, no problem. And in my lifetime, I've heard that so many times. It's like, oh, it's easy, easy, no problem. But of course, he went out to get a taxi and tried to show him this piece of paper with the map with Thai on it. And of course, the taxi driver had no idea where to go. I mean, just completely at a loss. And so they're driving. He went there with another foreigner, you know, that he met. They shared the taxi. And they're just driving around and around and around, trying to find this place. The clock is ticking, more and more stress. And they finally get to this huge building. And then it's almost impossible to find the entrance. And he has no choice to cut the taxi driver loose because the taxi driver can't find the entrance. And now he's on foot in this brutal heat. And at one point they came to a river, you know, with a bunch of rocks on the river, and says, well, maybe we can get there by crossing this river and hopping from rock to rock. But they didn't want to do that, so they're walking down these long corners, and they finally find the entrance. And Michele was saying the same thing as before. It's like, oh, I hope we got here before everybody else. Like, you know, I really made an effort to get here early, you know, so he had hope, he had optimism. But they walk into this thing, and of course, there are thousands of people already there, you know, already waiting and already going through the process. So that didn't work out as well as he had hoped. Anyway, to hear the rest of his story, you know, you really should check out his video. But to make a very long story short, I think he was there for 6, maybe 7 hours. He did finally get his visa extension, but it was not easy. And I think it was the first day, maybe it was the first day of operation for this new site. So things were, the system was not fully operational yet. They were still maybe working out the kinks. And this is something that I think about a lot because I'm kind of all about systems and organization and stuff like that. And I have this principle I've developed over the years that there's two sides to this question. One, of course, is that you should have a good system. You know, for something like this, you're processing thousands of visa extensions every day in the middle of this crisis. Well, you got to do a lot of planning, you've got to do a lot of organizing, and you've got to come up with a good system for doing this. But even if you have a good system, it's really not much use if you don't tell people what the system is. That's just as important as having the system. You know, it's great to have the system, but the people that it's for, they should know what it is. And that's where, in my experience, things fall apart quite often around the world. So in this case, there did seem to be a system in place to handle this large crowd of foreigners trying to get visa extensions. But Michele, just showing up out of the blue, it was very difficult for him to figure out what the system was. Like, what is going on here? I mean, the system itself could have been perfect, but he had no idea because he didn't know what the system was. They did, but he didn't. And then when he was trying to get information about, okay, how does this work? Like, what do I do? The people who should be giving him some reassurance and some information really weren't up to the task. I mean, their English ability was not good enough for them to explain how this all works, you know? At the very beginning, he wandered around for a long time, couldn't figure out what to do, and all he could get from anybody was sit on a chair. They had this wide open courtyard, like open to the sun, and it was filled with hundreds of chairs, and people were sitting on these hundreds of chairs, and all he could get from the local people was just sit down, sit down in a chair. And he's like, okay, but shouldn't I register first? I mean, I don't want to sit down and wait there for 5 hours and then nothing happens. I mean, don't I have to get a number? Don't I have to sign up? Don't I have to do something? And they would just say, no, sit, no, sit. So eventually, after trying several times to get this information, he had no choice but to give up and just sit. So he went out into the crowded chairs, and he would find one that was empty in the middle of the crowd, and he would go to sit down, and people would say, no, not there. And he'd go to another one, no, not there. And he's like, well, where can I sit exactly? And eventually he figured out, as I figured out while watching, the way these chairs were lined up, there was kind of like a lineup. So you had to walk all the way to the back, the very, very back row, and take the last available chair, and that chair would be like your place in the lineup. And the people at the front of this crowd were being served, one line at a time. And it was like one of the funniest things, which kind of makes sense, but is also kind of weird, that as the lineup moved forward, instead of moving from chair to chair, you picked up your chair and took it with you. So, you pick up your chair and then you move a few feet ahead, put it down, and you sit down again. And if you don't get the social distance exactly right between the other chairs, or you move too far forward, they had all these guards there would just come running up and shouting at you and pointing quite aggressively, that, no, there. So it was quite a stressful situation, but mainly because even as he was sitting in the chair, he didn't know what he was doing there. Like, why am I sitting in this chair? I don't have a number, I haven't registered, so am I going to get to the front of the line and they're going to want to process my visa application and I won't have anything, because I haven't registered yet. Like, is this part of what's going on? What's the process? And another problem he faced was that the 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever it was, that he was sitting in this chair, the sun had come up over the nearby buildings and was now beating down on all of these people just like sitting out in the middle of this pavement. And it got brutally hot. And this location was brand new, so there was nothing there. You couldn't buy water or anything to eat, anything to drink. I think at the regular immigration center, it's a more developed area, and you could, if you needed to, go buy a bottle of water, go find a 7-Eleven or something. But here at this new location, you couldn't do that. And Michele, not knowing that, hadn't come prepared. He didn't bring, a sunshade or bottle of water or food or anything, because he didn't know what he would be facing when he got there. Poor guy. As the day went on, he just got more and more hungry, more and more thirsty, more and more hot and tired as he went through the process. And this area is another good example of, what the atmosphere is like here in Mae Sot. Got a market, open air, fresh market there. A lot of shops, and everything around me is open. You don't have a lot of people on the streets, not a lot of people in the market. But as I said before, I've never found Mae Sot to be a particularly busy place anyway. So this feels like a normal day to me, more or less. The big difference really is the lack of cross-border traffic. Once they shut the border and there were no longer, people going back and forth to Myanmar, that really changed the tone of the town. But other than that, not much else seems to have changed so far. Anyway, I think when Michele got to the front of the musical chairs, I think that's when he was finally able to register and get a number. And as he said, that's not a number he's going to soon forget, because it dominated his life for the rest of the day. And then from there, things got a little bit weirder, because where he had been in the musical chairs, it had all been set up precisely because it was such an open area and they could maintain social distance. That was the whole point of moving immigration to this place. But now that he had to move to the next part of the process, you know, he had to pick up his chair, take it with him, and then climb up several sets of stairs, you know, quite crowded with lots of other people in there, and then go into another area. I think it was a parking garage, I think. And there, the social distancing, much, much harder to maintain, pretty much impossible. So there's a lot of crowding of people, a lot of shouting and yelling, people on intercom systems shouting things that nobody could understand. And now he had to start all over again. Like, hey, what do I do? Where do I sit? Do I wait for my number? Do I go here? What do I do exactly? And I think he was up there for another, 3 or 4 hours. And as I said, there was a happy ending. He eventually got his passport back with a visa extension for 30 days, stamped in it. He had to pay 1,900 baht, the usual fee for that 30 days. So yeah, I watched the whole video beginning to end, and my heart broke for the poor guy. And I was so relieved that when my time came to do a visa extension, I was here in Mae Sot, and I didn't face that kind of difficulty. Once I had all my papers in order here, I think they processed my extension in 5 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. I walked in, sat down, and 5 minutes later I walked out, and we were done. So it was a much more pleasant experience for me. So that's the story of Michele Ponte. A lot of other things happened in the video. I won't spoil them. You really should watch it, and watch it all the way to the end. Something quite heartbreaking and funny happens at the end of his story. But a couple of ideas came out, while watching this video. I understand, the way that they did it from a certain point of view. I mean, Thailand is an extremely popular tourist destination. I think I saw a figure that there were still like 500,000 foreigners in the country, even, after the lockdown. And you're talking about a wide range of people, everybody from, retired nurses on a trip of a lifetime to Thailand, to retirees, people from all over the world that retired and came here to, buy a little house and settle down here. And then you've got the young backpackers with almost no money. And then you've got some really wild and crazy, hippie types and all kinds of different lifestyles. So you've got all these people to deal with, and you kind of want to keep track of them. I mean, a lot of people were suggesting that Thailand should just waive all extensions or fees or visa services for the duration of the COVID-19 crisis. And in a way that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, I mean, that's a tough call for a government to make, to just say, all right, nobody has to worry about their visa, just stay as long as you want. And after the crisis is over, you go to the airport, we will just let you leave. No fee, no fine, no detention, no problems, That would be the most logical thing to do. And I've heard that some countries have actually done that. But at the same time, as I said, that's a tough call for a government minister to make. But it does make sense. I was thinking about this, that all the emergency measures that I talked about earlier that they have, probably the most important one is a ban on all large gatherings. Like when they trace the infections that they have here in Thailand, there aren't very many of them. There hasn't been a lot of recorded deaths or even infections compared to most places around the world. So we're quite lucky here so far. But when they trace back those infections, most of them went back to like 2 or 3 key events. There was one, for example, a big fight at a boxing stadium. Maybe it was Thai boxing, probably was, and Muay Thai. And they could trace the infections back to that one big boxing event at night where, a couple thousand people crowded into a little boxing stadium. So they said, okay, we can't have that. We are going to ban all large gatherings. You can't get together in big groups or even small groups. Makes sense. But now we have a situation where, because of the requirement for a visa, 5,000 people crowd into a very small area and spend up to 7 or 8 hours, interacting with each other. So the government policy actually created the largest gathering that there is in all of Thailand. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. And in a way, it's even worse from the Thai point of view, because there is a lot of, not a lot, there is some fear of foreigners here right now. Probably the same in every country. You see a lot of articles about how this person traveled from this country to that country and they brought the virus with them. So, there is some hesitation around foreigners, especially if you are from Spain or Italy or even the United States now, countries like that. And so the Thais are very nervous about foreigners in general. Michele was even not allowed to stay in a certain hotel because of him being a foreigner. And he freaked out his taxi driver when he told him he was from Italy. And I thought maybe the taxi driver would even refuse to take him because he is from Italy. So you have this, unease around foreigners, and yet this visa extension process brought together this huge gathering of people, but not just a huge gathering of people, a huge gathering of the most at-risk population from their point of view, foreigners. So it was like a double whammy of the worst possible thing you could do. And they did their best. They anticipated this and moved immigration to this new venue, much larger and more wide open spaces. But they were still overwhelmed by the number of people that show up every day. So it's, in terms of the emergency measures or common sense rules to contain the spread of the virus, it's really like the worst thing you could possibly do. So yeah, very interesting video to watch, and fascinating situation for poor Michele, stranded in Bangkok. Another interesting story that I came across was from the Philippines, and this video was done by, I think his name is Adam Freediver on YouTube. Again, I'll put a link to his video in the description. And he flew to Manila, I believe, on March 12th. And I guess before he went there, everyone told him it was fine, his travel agent and everybody, and he's a free diver, and he was going there on a planned trip to go snorkeling and free diving in these beautiful reefs of the Philippines. So it was a big trip for him and something they've been planning for a long time. So he arrives in Manila on March 12th. He's from Australia. He lands there and he finds out that Manila is going into complete lockdown, I believe, on March 15th. So he lands on the 12th, and they tell him on the 15th, nobody gets in or out of Manila. So he, as quickly as he could, got on a flight to take him to Panglao in the Philippines, where he was going to go free diving. And I find that kind of interesting because, knowing what we know now, what he should have done once he heard this, Manila is closing in 3 days, he should have gotten on a flight all the way back to Australia right away, and not risk getting caught in the country. But it's sort of like that story you hear, whether it's apocryphal or not, I'm not sure, about how if you put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly heat it up, you know, the frog will just sit there and then eventually die as the water reaches a boiling point because he doesn't react to the gradual increase in temperature. And that's kind of what happened to a lot of foreigners. You know, all he knew at that time was Manila was closing. So he thought, well, I have to get out of Manila. So he flew to his destination in the Philippines. He didn't know that the process was going to continue and continue and continue. Next, all the islands are going to close, then the airports are going to close, then the whole country is going to lock down. Had he known that, he would have left right away. But he didn't know that, you know. It's like it snuck up on so many people, this gradual situation getting worse and worse, and then suddenly, boom, you know, all borders shut. And it took him by surprise. But oh, I really felt for him too, though, because he flew to Panglao, got off the plane at his destination, and he forgot his passport on the plane. He left it in the seat pocket. So there he was, trapped in what is probably one of the worst or the biggest crises, you know, the world has faced in a long time. You know, I don't think anything like this has ever happened before, with so many borders closing, and he was facing it without his passport, and that was not good news. Luckily, you know, being a YouTuber and a freediver, I guess he knows a lot of people, has a large community, and he found someone that could go to the airport, get his passport from the airline, and then ship it to him. But by the time that was arranged, more things had shut down. And it was no longer possible to fly the passport back to Panglao. It had to be sent by ship, but that ship could only go so far, and then all ship traffic between the islands was shut down. You know, so he went through this long, dramatic adventure of just trying to get his passport back, you know, which he left on the airplane. And then now, when he was in Panglao, the situation quickly got worse and worse, and he had family, wife and a child in Australia, so he wanted to go home, and he started doing what a lot of foreigners, you know, found themselves doing, trying to book flights. And he booked one flight all the way back to Australia, and then suddenly it was canceled. Booked a second flight, it was canceled. Booked a third set of flights, they were all canceled. And he had to pay up front in full for all three of these flights. And of course, so he lost all that money for now. And there's nothing he could do about it. Has to wait probably weeks or months for a refund, or if he ever gets one. And then finally, with a lot of help from local people that were gathering together, stranded foreigners, putting together like emergency transportation for them, a boat to get him to Cebu, I think, and then a flight from there to Singapore. He got to Singapore, and then he made it out of Singapore, I think, the day before Singapore completely shut down. So he ended up back in Australia in 2-week quarantine, but he just made it out by the skin of his teeth, you know. For someone like me, you know, if I were stuck in Panglao in the Philippines, it would not bother me that much. From what I know of the Philippines, it's one of my favorite places. Been there many times. And from what I know, it's not that hard to extend visas normally. You know, you can extend a visa many times to stay inside the country. So I think in terms of visa problems, you know, the Philippines is one of the better places to be stuck. And of course, where he was, man, it was just drop dead gorgeous, beautiful scenery, incredible, you know, scuba diving and free diving. So it might have been a good place to be stuck. But of course, he had a, you know, wife and daughter at home. And being chased out by the local dogs. I'm walking alongside the highway here, and I don't think they see very many people walking here. But yeah, with his family responsibilities, he wanted to get back to Australia, and luckily he made it. So Adam Freediver, you can check out his video if you want to see his story in full. I've also been in contact with some friends of mine and relatives in different places. And we're all busy exchanging stories about our situation and what we're going to do next. Malaysia is a little bit confusing to me. You know, I know people there, and we keep coming across little hints that the government is going to forgive any visa overstays. Like the immigration office, all the offices in Malaysia are closed. A friend of mine went to try to extend his visa, and he went to 2 different immigration offices, and there's nobody there. The doors are locked. So you just cannot do anything. And because of that, I believe the government is going to forgive anyone who overstays their visa. That by the time the situation gets back to normal, you will have 14 days to leave the country, and then no one will question you at the airport. You know, they'll just stamp you out, which is a very, very intelligent way to deal with it. It at least avoids the situation, you know, where you have thousands of people crowded into a government office, you know, trying to extend their visa. You know, it's interesting that in my case, I spend like 99.99% of my time completely alone, you know, in my room or just walking like this. I don't know anybody in Mae Sot. I have no friends here, no family, not even an acquaintance, you know, so I'm alone almost 100% of the time, which I guess is good from the social distancing, preventing the spread of the virus. But the one time I was in a small room with a whole bunch of other people and in close contact with a lot of people, the only time I was in that situation was when I had to go get my visa extended. You know, so it is kind of funny that the one thing the government requires me to do is the one thing that goes against, you know, the kind of the common sense measures to control the spread of the virus. And in Malaysia, they just close them. There are no immigration offices open, though at the same time, they don't seem to have made it very public what the policy is. You really have to dig in order to find out what's going on, you know. And I know people in Malaysia were quite stressed out because their visa's expiring and they have to fly out of the country, but there's nowhere to go. All the borders are closed. You know, maybe they could go to their home country, but in an odd worldwide twist, something we've probably never seen before, all of the countries that these people are from tend to be in Western Europe or North America, and currently, you know, the spread of the coronavirus is the most extreme in all those places. So for anyone considering leaving Thailand or leaving Malaysia and to go home, it doesn't make a lot of sense because they're going from a place where there's relatively low risk to their home countries where the risk is much, much higher. And of course, by virtue of the fact that they're traveling, you know, getting in a plane with a bunch of other people, flying to another country, you know, there's the added risk of spreading the virus. I mean, governments everywhere want everybody to stay put where you are. Don't go anywhere. And that makes a lot of sense. But then foreign tourists are running into the situation where they have no choice but to get on a plane and fly home. And then when they do, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos of people who documented their trip home, and you get quite a few comments to the video criticizing them for traveling. It's like, oh, it's so dangerous for you to travel. You should have stayed in the Philippines. You should have stayed in Thailand. You know, don't go home. It's almost like you're criticized if you do and criticized if you don't. You know, if you stay, if you leave, you know, both things are not good. And there's probably the most popular backpacker hangout in Mae Sot, the Sleep Nest Hostel. Just has one big dormitory room there. So it's kind of a cost-effective place for backpackers to stay. And I don't think they have anybody staying there at all. I mentioned a while back that I saw a man sitting out front. I went over to talk to him, and he was a young man from France who was hitchhiking around the world, and just speaking about feelings about foreigners, and a little bit of hesitation there. He was staying in the dormitory, and then some local people showed up, some people from Thailand, Thai citizens, and they paid to stay there as well. And then they moved into the dormitory, and then they saw this young man, found out that he was from France, and they immediately just turned around and left. According to the story that they told me, they didn't even ask for their money back. They were not in any mood to hang around. Oh, he's from France, and they refused to stay there with him in the room, and they just left, found somewhere else to stay. This is the sign for Borderline Cafe, Shop, and Gallery, by the way. Handicrafts, art gallery, food, cooking classes. And I thought I could pop in there for a cold drink, but it looks to be completely closed. They have a sign there that says takeaway only. But the gate is fully closed anyway. So I will not be getting a cold drink at Borderline today either. Tried to go here the other day, but it was closed then as well. So I think I might go for another bubble tea and bring it back to my room at the first hotel. That seems like a good idea. Hello. Local dogs keeping me at my proper social distance for the owners. Well, I have my bubble milk tea, though to be honest, I have no idea what kind of bubbles I got. It turns out that the coronavirus is affecting the worldwide supply of tapioca balls. I think here they call them bobo or something, but they told me that they've run out of bobo, the normal tapioca balls that you put in bubble milk tea. But they did have some other things. We were working through the language barrier as best we could, and he pointed at a few things, and I think he said something like apple and strawberry and something else. So we eventually settled on something, but I have no idea what we settled on. So I have no idea what flavor milk tea and bubbles I ended up getting. We'll find out in a few minutes. I found over the years that's one of the few advantages I have for this kind of lifestyle, in that I really don't care that much about a lot of things. So, I mean, with the language barrier to any country you go to in the world, you pretty much got a 50-50 chance of understanding what's going on, you know? I would say 50-50 at best. So, you know, if you go into a restaurant and you sit down and you order something, you've got about a 50% chance of actually getting what you think you ordered, you know, because that's just the way things are. And with the language barrier, you know, things just get misunderstood. You have no idea what's going on. And if you're the type of person that gets upset about that, you know, you've ordered this type of noodles with this kind of topping, and you get different noodles and different topping, and you make a big deal about that and send it back and try to get what you originally ordered, you know, you're kind of setting yourself up for a difficult life. Me, I have no particular concerns about that sort of thing. I barely know what I'm ordering half the time. So if I order noodles and I end up getting rice, you know, I just sit down and I eat it, you know. Trying to send back the rice because you ordered noodles is not really going to get you very far. And what do I care whether I have noodles or rice for lunch? So I tend to eat what they bring to the table and drink what they hand me. I mean, I prefer to have the regular bubble milk tea with the regular tapioca balls. But if I end up with, you know, strawberry flavored something else, Well, that's just what I've got, and I'll enjoy it. I really don't care that much. Yeah. Yeah, even in the midst of the coronavirus, you got to really keep an eye on the street to make sure you don't get run over by traffic. Still pretty busy here. All right, the test has come. I've got my bubble milk tea here, and I see green bubbles and red bubbles. So I have no idea what I've ordered here. Let's see. Whoa. Those are completely different. They're not like tapioca balls at all. They're like small balloons. When you bite on them, they pop. And I'm tasting apple for the green, and I think I'm tasting strawberry. So there you go. Apple and strawberry bubble milk tea as my reward for being out in that 105-degree heat today. So I think that is it for today's video. A little update on life here in Mae Sot in the COVID-19 era. And I will see you in the next video.